Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Mayfield. I'm currently a business analyst at SteerBridge. I've come to this company after 30 years in the Marine Corps, of which 24 were spent on Marine Corps recruiting. And today I'm accompanied by Devin, and we're going to talk about a lot of technology solutions that SteerBridge has to offer. Sir, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Devin Dupaix. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at SteerBridge. I also served in the Marine Corps 10 years, mostly reserves in infantry, and then I've now been in the Army Reserves, and I work as an intelligence officer. But my parallel career, being a reservist, my main day job, I worked in finance, originally in traveler check inventory management, and then in mergers acquisitions with Goldman Sachs doing asset servicing. And then following work with Goldman Sachs, I worked for Emerson Network Power, dealing with data center infrastructure management software. Spent some time active duty with the Army, and being a software engineer, got to do some solutions for SOCOM in Afghanistan with Microsoft, and that led me to continue working government contracts. After I left active duty in 2020, worked with eSpire, supporting information operations software, and now with SteerBridge, supporting cloud solutions for what we call supply chain management, SCM, with F-35, AI, ML, advanced algorithms.
Hey, awesome, Devin. Thank you for that. That's quite the resume. You've done a lot out there, not only with the Marine Corps and the Army, but also out there in the commercial sector. What's your expertise and experience in the realm of like data, databases, and AI?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would point out with it is, I often talk to people about what we call Medallion Architecture. A lot of companies want to go straight to artificial intelligence or machine learning, but there's a maturity aspect to data and putting data in the right context for decisions or questions that you're trying to answer or resolve. So a Medallion Architecture is looking at taking your raw bronze type ingest data and putting it into a cleaned and improved architecture or silver level data that we then analyze and aggregate. And when you get business level aggregates, that's where it meets that gold quality standard. That's where you're really ready for quality AI ML at a higher level to get higher quality outputs from your learning models or your decision matrices.
So is that a service that we offer, right? If the big buzzword right now is artificial intelligence. Everybody wants AI. Hey, we want to inject AI into a process that we do. When you go in and you do an analysis or an assessment of where they currently sit, right? If they're at that bronze level, right, and don't have the data attributes or what have you that they need, are we able to help them use AI absent that data?
So if they're completely absent data, no, because really everything is data driven, but most people do have equities in data that can get to where they need to go, but there's a maturation process, and we're there to help with that, right? We can provide consultative or professional services to help fill the gaps, get the data where it needs to go, but part of it's also just having that business understanding and partnership to make sure that we put things in the right context. But yes, the main point is we can take you from wherever you are and show you what data actions and steps need to be taken to get you where you want to go. But, in its broadest sense, AI is thrown around a lot, but artificial intelligence could describe anything algorithmic, anything computers do to help us, even basic calculators, right? Whereas at its most advanced step, a lot of people think of like ChatGPT, it's a large language model. That deals more with machine learning and drawing meaning from data. So in its simplest context, they say that, from your logic, your rules-based approach, then you get answers. Data and rules give you answers. Whereas if you take answers and the data, you can understand rules, right? And so when that difference is how you can then say you're actually having a large language model or machine learning is occurring when you're actually trying to extract rules from the training data answers. That's a different approach, whereas broadly speaking, artificial intelligence historically, it was more rules-based with data for answers.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. what to you, why is it interesting, right? What makes data, databases, AI, and tech such fascinating subject in today's fast-paced world?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to one might not be to another, but the nature, I think, of humans, there's just a natural curiosity about the unknown, right? And a lot of what we deal with in computer science is trying to find patterns and solve problems. So that was interesting to me at a young age. And, some of what I do day to day might be described as nerdy, but arguably, there's generational shifts in society. And what most people do today with their smartphones or computers in their day work or, watching YouTube, a lot of that would have been described as nerdy, 20, 30 years ago. So the nerd norm is spreading, you might say. It's somewhat a question of how nerdy people are going, but the coding behind it, people are all using the devices like nerds, you might argue, compared to how when we grew up, nobody had smartphones. There was no such thing, right? Just in the 90s, 80s, there wasn't even internet. So everything is kind of changing from the baseline of what people used to have, where technology used to have a marginal role. Now, especially electronic digital media is changing behaviors, and that's organizational or individual based, right? But for me, what's fascinating is really being able to find those patterns, solve larger problems. Similar, like in the Army for Intel, we look at decision points and Intel support to decision points, and we create priority intelligence requirements, right? Data is similar in general. We have data requirements that tie into business decision points, and finding ways to put that data in the decision context with algorithms or machine learning. That's what it's all about.
Thank you for sharing that. AI is fascinating to me, the realm of possibility, but I cannot lie that there are parts of me that are scared about it, right? That are concerned with AI, the use of AI. Some would argue that AI poses ethical dilemmas, especially with data privacy. What's your perspective on this intriguing debate?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely risks at a larger scale when AI becomes more advanced. I think privacy is a whole nother area, right, where there's always going to be trade-offs between security and privacy. NSA has to navigate that every day, and how they do their collection, who they're collecting against, and why, justifications. But already in social media realms and how people work with their cell phones, they're giving away biometric data, personal data, with how they add, shop, and behave online. So you have a digital footprint, whether it's on the white net or the dark net. There's a lot for sale already on just about everybody. So personally, I think the EU has actually probably led ahead of the United States when it comes to regulating how privacy data is handled. And there's probably a lot more that could be done there to protect people's personal data. But that being said, in the realm that we live in, there's a large exploitation market, especially around retail and commercial activities that uses people's personal data every day. The AI aspect of it, there's advantages and disadvantages just about any way you go, because you're looking at China, where they have advanced facial voice recognition technology, and they give people their citizenship score based off of auto-detective identity and behavior. Whereas in the United States, we regulate CCTV, and we have very limited ability to analyze our citizens, right? And I appreciate not being analyzed as a citizen, but there is a technology disadvantage in some ways versus China right now on how we do our facial recognition software and the amount of data available for training and refinement of our algorithms. Whereas we also have a emerging capability in how we use drones, right? Whether it's ground-based systems or air-based systems. We've invested a lot more in air-based systems, arguably, but I think the next conflict is going to heavily involve ground-based and air-based drone systems. We have some advantages there, but if China's able to effectively use their facial recognition software, they might end up being actually more effective in a coin-type environment, being able to engage adversaries because they have advanced characterization software compared to us.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. I think regardless of what side of the coin you're on, whether you're for AI or against AI, it's here, right?
It's here.
We need to leverage that capability and that technology to advance our interest and to ensure that we outpace our pacing threats, right?
That's right.
And it sounds like we may, at least on the forward-facing side, be behind what others are doing. My hope is that we're not that far behind. What's in it for the viewer or the listener, right? Those that are kind of listening in, how will understanding these topics benefit our audience, particularly those interested in technology and innovation?
Yeah, I think that, again, to my earlier point, that nerd behavior is almost like a germ that's spreading, right? At the end of the day, you have to decide how comfortable you are with embracing it and using it. But to some extent, things like ChatGPT or large language models can complement and enhance what anyone does. I know in the 1990s, there was a lot of disruption in the chess world when the first U.S. or Russian master chess player lost to a machine, right? But one of the chess players, he came up with a term called the centaur model, where he said he would play against computers to enhance his own ability to play chess. And so I think that kind of centaur model mentality would complement just about any job field now. That I've seen some analysis that lawyers, 80% of what they do can be done better by a machine, but there's still 20% of nuanced legal work that you need humans for.
Right.
And so finding that ability to leverage technology in whatever it is you do is going to enhance the time efficiency and make you work smarter, not harder.
That's fascinating. So in the chess scenario that you brought up, rather than being upset that the computer had the capability to beat him, used the computer to train him on different ways to attack the board based on the speed at which that computer could do it. So that he was learning from the machine, so that ultimately I think he could beat the computer, right? Or at least
beat it or perform better against himself,
right, and others.
Humans,
right. Now that's fascinating. Why this topic is important, right? Why is it essential for businesses and individuals alike to stay updated on the latest trends and developments in data, databases, artificial intelligence, and technology?
Well, if you sign up for a tech job, you're signing up to always be learning, because the minute you stop learning, there's updates and you get outdated, right? So especially today, the speed of technology improvement, it's exponential, right? It's not a linear improvement. It's a curve that's rapidly accelerating. And so if you step away, the difficult thing often for organizations is that they're invested in legacy systems, and you want the money value that you've invested, but you have to balance that with keeping it integrated and updated with later technology and trends. So that's always the nexus of it. And when I first was working with Emerson, we had two very different software offerings. One was an enterprise solution based on Java, and Java has kind of a longer life cycle of support, but a very high cost per entry. So if you can't pay $100,000 a year, you couldn't afford our software.
Right.
So we offered an alternate system based on JavaScript. JavaScript is fast and easy to build, but it constantly has to be updated and recompiled, and it creates thousands of interdependencies, right? So if you don't keep your Java software updated, it can still run and stay stable for 3 years. JavaScript, on the other hand, if you leave it for 6 months, it will have dependencies that break, right? And so JavaScript has to continually be updated and maintained as part of its software development lifecycle. So there's a trade-off between waterfall type approaches and agile. So sometimes they call it agile fall, or different types of hybrid combinations, where waterfall has the formal planned process with longer shelf life and stability. Agile is more adaptable and responsive to changing requirements, which is the reality of business today. Right. So I think every business leader has to find their own comfort space in that dichotomy of being fast and agile versus being built to last, and have that longer term return on investment for your technology dollars.
Yeah, right. Something that comes to mind on that, and an analogy or a way to kind of draw that connection is on a car, I guess, right? I bought a car in the mid 2000s, and I wanted to get everything I could out of that.
Yep.
And when it was time to buy a new car, the technology leap that others had over me in terms of the automated cruise control, my washers came off and on by themselves, the lights came on, that technology leap is a lot, right? And so I think what you're doing is that there's a balance between trying to get the maximum amount of use and value from the legacy system. But if you hold on to that legacy system, you're going to miss out on future capabilities that can actually help you improve safety or performance or speed at which you perform your job.
That's right. That's right. And in government space, you often find the complexity is between what you keep on premise versus today what's on cloud. And that's the cloud is almost like the vehicle paradigm with leasing, right? Where leasing, you can just use it as needed and then return it. You don't actually own it.
Right.
Whereas on-prem, you've purchased your car. Right. That's your car.
So, you own it.
Yeah. It's not just a capital model. You've got a significant investment at that point. Whereas the cloud is looking at an operational cost that can be monthly and terminated at will. Your car ownership is that capital investment that, you've spent X amount and you want to get that return on investment. So you can't just let it go month to month.
Right. But doing that model, as the cloud improves, performance improves, the pipes improve, you're not, because you're static once you buy that server that's on-prem. I mean, you can, I'm assuming there are some things that you can buy to improve it, but at some point, there's not much left that you can do with that server, right? While the cloud and the customers that are in the cloud are beginning to outpace you at a speed that you just can't compete with. And over time, I'd imagine that the one you own becomes cost prohibitive trying to maintain.
Possibly, yeah. And, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So cloud, it's similar to leasing in the sense that, you might still have the same car that you're using for 3 years. If you've got a virtual machine, you might be leasing just that specific machine. And there's still costs of migration in cloud between updated devices and things like that. They might abstract some of the maintenance cycle, but when you're really in the cloud, you'll see that it is more like a lease where you still have a vehicle you become familiar with, and to go to a new vehicle would still, there's factors for transitioning data and migration, right? Where when you're on-prem, you're looking at a hardware constraint, but from a software perspective, there's certain updates and maintainability. You can keep it up to date and keep it relevant for longer to get your return on investment. But eventually, everything has a migration requirement and a replacement time frame.
Okay, got it. Can you give us an overview of the current state of data management, databases, AI applications, and technology trends?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to that Medallion Architecture, every organization is in its own data journey where they're trying to say, hey, this is how our business operates, this is our financial plan, and this is how technology or data supports that plan, right? And so the interface of business and technology, it's something that everyone has to navigate. I think that in the past, technology played a somewhat minor role in some organizations, and every organization now is being forced to grapple with it in their day-to-day in a larger, more prominent role, just because of the rapid advances of large language models and other technology. I think that what used to be interesting or just required from a perspective of, hey, we need a laptop to work, or we're doing remote work during COVID, so we had to have video conferencing, whatever it is. Beyond just that connectivity aspect of technology, we're now getting into the operational execution aspects of business. And to not use technology is to be at a disadvantage in many areas of business now, because it can take any mule work, mundane aspects that, like when I started off talking about the traditional AI model of data and rules giving answers, that's become more efficient, that's faster, that's going to continue to improve with quantum computing, being able to break encryption. There's all kinds of new applications of how just regular paradigms of traditional technology is changing the world. But the fact that now we have learning models where you can take data and the answers and train it to give you new rules, new insights, that's where, if we're looking at chess, where it used to be a 2-hour game between two computers and they come to a stalemate, we can now have chess that plays like a human, that's aggressive and creates new rules. And we saw that in Go as well, when they programmed software that could beat grandmasters in Go. It was breaking Chinese culture and doing things humans didn't think was possible, because it was creating new rules from the same data, but changing our assumptions. And I think that's really the exciting aspect of where we're going to go in the next 30 to 50 years, is how human behavior changes because of the technology, and it's going to make it better. Now, we need guardrails.
Sure.
But essentially putting your data in a state where it can be part of that decision cycle and, create new rules to outpace your competition in every industry, that's going to be a paradigm shift.
That's awesome. How does SteerBridge fit into the landscape of data, databases, AI, and technology?
Yeah, again, I think some of my friends in other companies, they make AI tools, and they say that they're not necessarily trying to mine gold. They're selling the picks for the gold rush, right? So for SteerBridge, we're trying to help partner with the actual gold mining. Now, someday, if we became a larger corporation, whatever, we might grow into a tool selling business. But right now, we are a partner in gold mining. So we help you go through your data, get it to a more advanced stage, and get it into pipelines, data warehouses, data lakes, so that you have the right architecture and the right system for success with your data management architecture.
Awesome. What specific services or solutions does SteerBridge offer in these domains?
Right. So broadly speaking, I would divide it up with data science and analytics being, the overall end state of what we do. We also have data architecture, data engineers that help with the pipelines and the implementation so that you can do batch or real-time data processing and management. And then we have software engineers that help you put it all into a visualization and system that is accessible to your people so that you're putting data in that problem context we were talking about.
Right. Awesome. Could you share a success story where SteerBridge effectively implemented AI or database solutions for a client?
Yeah, our primary example would be F-35 supply chain management. I think we talked about it briefly, but basically we're looking at the planning of ASPs, and we're analyzing when the Marines go out on a ship, they're out for 6 months or so. Right now they're taking thousands of parts, and many of them, they estimate are only having around a 15 to 30% utilization. So they have a lot of things on ship that they didn't end up needing. And like if you go out on a cruise, if you bring a lot of luggage that you didn't use, next time you go on that cruise, you might not take as much, right?
Right.
So we're trying to help them smartly understand how to optimize that loadout, right? And so we use what's called big O notation a lot of times in technology, where we're looking at, how something increases or decreases in time or compute power on costs. And so similar to big O notation, we're trying to estimate the complexity and waste for their ASPs, DSPs, how much they can improve for, packing lighter but smarter. Because what's unfortunate is even though they bring all these thousands of things, imagine you needed something like a flashlight.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, I brought 10 pairs of shoes, I only needed 6, but I didn't even bring a flashlight. So next time you want that flashlight, there's things that they didn't bring that they ended up needing. So we analyzed the wait time around the supply unavailability as well.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. What are some common challenges businesses face when it comes to managing data, databases, and adopting AI?
Well, I think at square one, it's doing an analysis similar to, again, intelligence, where you have gaps, right? And there's things you want to know. You have to analyze the questions and the decisions that you need to make, and then say what information is necessary to adequately respond to the question or make a decision. And there's data that you have that helps with that, and there's often going to be gaps. And you have to strategically always be aware of your gaps. Some gaps might not be easy to solve. Like if you were looking at the lottery or some other things in the future, there's things that people guess at. Well, in decision world, there's still some unknowns. Some things are known unknowns, and you have to at least be aware of that to account for that in your confidence level, in your decision making or answering of questions, right? And so I think getting the most out of the data you have and putting them into the question or decision context is part of the riddle. And part of it's also just accounting for your unknown data that you don't have access to.
Thank you. How does SteerBridge address these challenges and provide unique solutions?
So again, I think it's part of the data cataloging, the inventory of what data is available to connect it into those decisions. So for F-35, again, we're trying to put things into a maintenance or supply context to tell you, hey, historically, this is what we've seen from a jet or a deployment, and then trying to merge those together into an ensemble approach to help you forecast and make decisions for future deployments.
So if you're someone that's come up without the use of AI and that, these pack outs with all these parts are what you've always done, right? How long do you think it will take for their confidence to increase where they actually trust that? Because I envision, right, a way in which the product that we're providing tells them you really only need this based on X, Y, and Z, and they're like, yeah, I'm taking everything, right? How long do you think it's going to take for confidence to increase where they begin to trust that output?
Yeah, I think for every organization that might be a little bit different based off of your cadence or rhythm, right? So if you have a weekly sync, then we're able to analyze that weekly sync over a period of time, and week by week, I think your confidence will grow. Within 1 to 2 months on a weekly basis, I think you have high confidence if you're seeing consistent positive results, right? Whereas if you're doing an annual meeting or you only have once a year data, then we have to take years of data, and it might take you 1 to 3 years to trust,
right,
based on good results on an annual cycle.
Because you brought up my cruise, right? And last cruise we went on, I packed a bunch of stuff, and when I came back, I actually did exactly what we're doing for F-35 and was like, okay, what is left clean in my bag that I didn't use?
Right.
And what did I actually use? And I have that, and I'm packing for my next cruise right now. And my confidence in my own notes taking is almost out the window. I'm going to mess around and take all them suitcases again. But based on this conversation, I'm going to trust my data, and I'm actually going to pack what I used last time and see how it goes.
Right. And again, we're conservative ourselves. So if we see some things that might be anomalous in the trends, we want to cushion it, because at some point, you don't want to be underprepared, right? So sometimes it's better to have things you don't use than to be stuck with something that you need and don't have. But the tragedy is, like I was saying with the flashlight scenario, where
right,
you needed a flashlight and didn't have it. So we want to add smartly, but also if you had 3 of something that you didn't use at all, maybe you bring 1 of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Where do you see the future of databases, or artificial intelligence and technology heading in the next decade?
Well, my humble opinion is that quantum computing is the big X factor that people aren't talking enough about. I mean, when I study for computer science and see what we're able to do with encryption and hacking right now, quantum computing can break RSA encryption, right? Quantum computing can change how computers operate. It's going to change hardware paradigms, software paradigms. So I think that things are going to get faster at a faster pace, and it's going to change how things operate. And I think, we're seeing electrical vehicles, we're seeing hydrogen vehicles. There's competing different options for where the world will go. But I think something like quantum computing, there's nothing that's competing with it. It outperforms regular computers in every way.
Right. Which I think is an important piece to take away from this, right? If you are at a company or you're part of the government and you've used a legacy system, traditionally you've been able to use a system that you buy or lease for 10 to 15 years. It sounds like technology is going to begin to go at such a pace that if you're used to buying something or using something for a set amount of time, that you can probably cut that in half, right? Because if not, you're going to be way outdated. I think I'd heard somewhere that when you go from the inception of the first computer that we had to where we are today, it took so many years. But that leap from that to what's next is going to be cut in half, if not less than that. So as we begin to accelerate with technology, you're going to have to iterate on whatever technology you're procuring at a faster rate as well.
That's right. It's an exponential accelerator, right? So whether you're looking at memory or compute power, it's rapidly accelerating. Quantum computing is an accelerator to the acceleration that we're already seeing, right? And if you're talking about data storage, data availability, most data isn't even used. It's just stored.
Right.
Right? What we're trying to help with is prioritizing amongst stored data what data can be of value and get that value extracted from stored data. But the amount of data stored around the world, it's continuing to just expand to the point where already 10 years ago, they probably had more data on some supercomputers than all of human history ever had in any library, right? And now we haven't just doubled it, we're exponentially more than that. And most companies don't know what to do with the vast amounts of data they have. But again, it comes down to, well, how does your business operate? How do you make profit? Take those patterns around your operations and find out how data can accelerate or enhance those operations. So there's always going to be that nexus of technology enabling or empowering your business plan, your core business.
Right. So if you have all that data, right, and you can't leverage it, it's useless to you, right? And so SteerBridge is able to come in, review all the data, determine how to best use that data so that someone can leverage the data that they have, right? Otherwise, it's just a closet full of clothes that nobody's wearing.
That's right.
Interesting. What advice would you give to businesses looking to harness the power of data, databases, AI, and technology to stay competitive?
Yeah, again, I think it's largely around correctly inventorying what's available, being aware of your gaps in your data, and part of your architecture is taking the data of value and making it a more easily accessible aspect of people's day-to-day. So whether it's the CEO or someone at the day-to-day analyst position at your company, if they don't have the data they need at the point of need, then they're going to make assumptions or decisions without data contributing. And that means that, when you're talking about 5 or 10 times repeating, you're going to have more errors.
Right. So when you say you assess the data or analyze the data that you have, determine the gaps, right? That's kind of going from that bronze, gold to platinum. If there's a data gap, right? Is there potential that there are other databases that might have that gap that you can integrate with to then pull in and ingest and then make better decisions to get them, to silver or platinum with data they already have within their company, maybe just somewhere else?
Yeah, there's always a possibility that there's another database, but you remember the terms I was using, that when you go from bronze to silvers, there's a cleaning aspect, but there's also an aggregating part. And when you get to gold with business level aggregates, what you're often able to do with multiple measures of data is at least approximate something that is close to what you need. So that's where averages or rates start to come into play. And those are example business level aggregates, where by getting an average of different things, you might be able to show what the future might be for that same measure, right? And so you might not have future data, or you might not have some risk data, but you can gather data that's related to it and come up with approximations. And large language models or different types of language learning or regular machine learning, it's often approximation.
All proper.
Right? Yeah. And so part of what we're doing with the company and what we do with F35 is to iterate with the customer and to effectively approximate what they're trying to estimate, predict, or forecast.
And then obviously as data's coming in, the approximations get better and better, and over time that V-ring on the target begins to get tighter and tighter, right?
That's right. And logic is a component of that, but the most important piece anyone would tell you is better data. The more quality of data that you have going into training or testing a model, the better the outputs will be for that model. Right. And that's where if you have a large language model that's trained on hate on the internet, it's going to put out hate in what it generates.
Right.
Whereas if you put it, train it up on Stanford lectures, it's going to put out text or generate content similar to Stanford lectures.
Right. Okay. Reflecting on our discussion, what are the key takeaways you hope our audience remembers about data, databases, AI, and technology?
Yeah, I would say that, in my opinion, the most important thing would be to say, don't fight technology, try to find a way to use it. So at the end of the day, technology firms right now are surging and they're partnering across all industries. You want to find the ways to weave that into your strategy or weave that into your day-to-day responsibilities to empower, enable, or accelerate your own processes and day-to-day responsibilities.
Awesome. What steps can a business or individual take right now to leverage data, databases, AI, and technology for success?
to me, I'm a proponent for education. So I'd say first think about what works for you, but try to find something to get smart on using these tools. There's many of these tools have their own learning platforms, but there's open source or open platforms like Udemy that could train you, teach you on it. Coursera, you can get degrees or micro degrees on different topics to use AI or ML in your day-to-day work. ChatGPT or other similar platforms can, you almost ask them that question, they'll just answer it and tell you some of the ideas or suggestions, but come up with a learning plan. Take time on a daily or weekly basis to hone your skills and, define success for yourself and see if it's actually performing according to your measures.
Awesome. Thanks, Devin. This has been great. I really appreciate all your insight and the value that you've given me, not only me, but our audience. As the Chief Technology Officer for SteerBridge, you got a wealth of knowledge, and I think you were really able to articulate that and that high level of thinking that you have, bring it down to the level that most of us, like myself, that aren't nerded out by AI, but are fascinated by how it's going to change our lives and impact our future. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.